And a little bit at that time they were legal, and I was actually prescribed a Quaalude for fear of flying.
It all started, oddly enough, at a small industry event in New York. One of those semi-private gatherings where everyone in the room is either impossibly powerful or deeply creative, often both. Martin Scorsese had just wrapped up a panel on the preservation of classic cinema, something he cares about more than perhaps anything else aside from filmmaking itself. Dressed in his signature black suit, glasses perched halfway down his nose, he looked every bit the elder statesman of American cinema. The event wasn't supposed to be newsworthy. It was quiet, intellectual, filled with reverence. But Scorsese, never one to mince words when he feels something deeply, did something wholly unexpected. He named 7 actors by name, whom he said in no uncertain terms he hated. Before we start, smash the like and subscribe buttons for more updates. The room went dead quiet. Not uncomfortable silence, but stunned silence. Scorsese, a man known for his meticulous vision and relentless love of cinema, had suddenly gone raw and personal. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't rant. He spoke the names like someone reading a list of betrayals, a series of wounds that had never quite healed. No one had asked him to do this. There was no provocation. It seemed to come from somewhere deeper. Some festering artistic grievance, or perhaps a sense of personal violation tied to the craft he holds so sacred. What made it so compelling was that Scorsese is not someone prone to petty Hollywood politics. His circle has always been tight. De Niro, Pesci, DiCaprio, and the like. He's worked with many, but trusted few. Over decades, he's remained above the fray, largely sidestepping the gossip and feuds that ensnare so many of his peers. So when he invoked the word hate, it carried a weight. This wasn't tabloid-style contempt. It was something else. Something more principled and artistic in nature. The first name he mentioned was Jared Leto. The room seemed to contract when it happened. Leto, the Oscar-winning actor known for his shape-shifting roles in Dallas Buyers Club, Requiem for a Dream, and his polarizing turn as the Joker in Suicide Squad, has long divided critics and fans alike. Scorsese, it turns out, found his approach not just unconvincing, but destructive to the art of acting. He didn't elaborate much. He didn't need to. The implication was that Leto's transformations felt to Scorsese more like spectacle than substance, style over soul. That's a cardinal sin in Marty's world. Then came Megan Fox. The mere mention of her name made heads tilt, not because she's commonly discussed in the same breath as Scorsese's usual collaborators, but precisely because she isn't. Fox, known for Transformers and her role in Jennifer's Body, represents a certain era of Hollywood excess, a kind of stylized, hyper-commercial image of acting that Scorsese has always resisted. He seemed to resent not Fox personally, but what she symbolized, the packaging of actors as brands before they've truly developed craft. Again, he offered no diatribe, just the name and a palpable sense of disappointment. The third name was more surprising, Ashton Kutcher. Scorsese paused after saying it, as if even he knew this one might raise eyebrows. Kutcher, often pegged as a comedic actor, had long tried to transition into more serious roles, with varying degrees of success. For Scorsese, though, it wasn't about failed potential. It was about dilution. Kutcher, with his early 2000s dominance and his leap into tech entrepreneurship, represented a kind of celebrity culture that Scorsese clearly felt had contaminated the art form. To him, acting is about disappearing into a role. And perhaps Kutcher's omnipresence in tabloids and tech startups made that kind of immersion impossible. It got even more pointed with the fourth name, Steven Seagull. Here, the reaction was different. There was a slight murmur of agreement. Seagull, once a box office draw in action flicks like Under Siege, had long been dismissed as more of a caricature than a craftsman. Scorsese didn't hide his disdain. Seagull, he implied, was emblematic of everything wrong with action cinema that places brute force over character development. In the Scorsese worldview, even violence must be earned emotionally, intellectually. Seagull's performances, often stoic to the point of parody, violated that credo. This was less personal, more philosophical, a clear line drawn in the sand. The fifth actor was someone far more contemporary, Tom Holland. That one stunned the crowd. Holland, the friendly, athletic, eternally youthful face of the Marvel Spider-Man franchise, had never seemed particularly controversial. But here, Scorsese's long-documented unease with Marvel came to the fore. It wasn't about Holland as a person. It was about what his career trajectory signaled. For Scorsese, who once said Marvel movies are more like theme parks than cinema, Holland's rise was a symptom of the systemic erasure of auteur-driven storytelling. He seemed to feel that Holland had been absorbed by the machinery, never truly tested by the demands of real dramatic acting. The naming of Holland wasn't cruel, it was mournful. Then came Gal Gadot. Like Holland, she represents a new kind of stardom, global, glossy, streamlined. As Wonder Woman, she became an icon almost overnight, but Scorsese seemed to see in her performances a flatness, a lack of interior life. In his world, the eyes must do as much acting as the lines. For all of Gadot's screen presence, Scorsese apparently felt she brought nothing deeper to the roles she played. He's a director who once said that De Niro could communicate 3 emotions in a single blink. Perhaps he saw in Gadot a kind of visual sheen that left no room for that subtlety. The final name, and by far the most shocking, was Will Smith. The gasp that followed was almost cinematic. Will Smith, the consummate entertainer, Oscar winner, former Fresh Prince, and star of everything from Ali to The Pursuit of Happiness, was not someone many would expect to land on Scorsese's blacklist. Yet there it was. Scorsese didn't explain this one in detail, but the implications were clear. He felt that Smith had, over time, traded authenticity for mass appeal. In Marty's universe, that's a moral compromise. The slap at the Oscars may have tainted Smith's public image for many, but for Scorsese, the real offense was likely older and more artistic in nature. Something about the choices Smith had made over the years, moving from raw, hungry performances to safer, blockbuster-laden ones. What made this moment unforgettable wasn't just the names, it was the quiet venom with which Scorsese delivered them. He wasn't raging, he was disappointed. The way a father might be after seeing his child squander a gift. In a strange way, that made the criticism more devastating. This wasn't about gossip, it wasn't personal drama or jealousy, it was artistic anguish, a sense that the sacred thing, cinema, was being cheapened, and that these actors were, in his eyes, complicit. The fallout in the room was immediate, even if the wider world hadn't caught wind of it yet. Agents' phones were already lighting up, PR reps were being briefed. But amid the scrambling and the disbelief, what lingered most was the sense that something had shifted. Scorsese had broken an unspoken rule, that you don't name names. You don't go public with loathing unless the grievance is personal. But he had, and that act itself was a kind of protest. In many ways, the moment was bigger than the individuals named. It was a statement on the direction of the film industry. Scorsese has always stood for something: depth, craft, intensity, the idea that cinema should challenge and disturb and enlighten. He came up in a time when movies were dangerous, when actors bled for their roles, when stories were morally ambiguous and emotionally raw. He watched that world slowly give way to franchises, to algorithms, to box office charts being dominated by intellectual properties rather than ideas. By calling out these 7 actors, he was drawing a line in the sand, not necessarily between good and bad, but between art and product, between soul and surface. He wasn't condemning fame or even success. He was condemning what he saw as a lack of artistic responsibility. And that hit hard because it wasn't said lightly. Coming from Scorsese, it carried the weight of legacy, of decades spent fighting for films that mattered, that made people feel something real. It also raised questions about influence. Scorsese's voice still holds tremendous power, especially among actors who grew up revering his work. To be publicly disavowed by him isn't just a reputational blow, it's a spiritual one. It's like being cast out of a temple you didn't even know you were trying to enter. For some of these actors, it might not matter. For others, it might sting in a way that reverberates into their choices going forward. There's also the unavoidable tension between generations here. The actors he named span different eras and genres, but many belong to a newer Hollywood, one that thrives on brand identity, instant recognition, digital virality. Scorsese's critique at its core was generational, not out of bitterness, but out of longing. A yearning for a time when performances were built from the inside out, not the outside in. When actors didn't just perform, they transformed, often at great personal cost. And perhaps that's what this moment ultimately revealed, the widening gap between 2 visions of what acting and cinema itself should be. On one side, there's the Scorsese vision, rough-edged, character-driven, deeply human. On the other, the modern model, streamlined, polished, designed to fit within massive entertainment ecosystems. For years, this tension simmered. But with those 7 names, Scorsese cracked it wide open. There's no telling what long-term impact this revelation will have. But in that room, in that moment, something real happened. A legend of cinema peeled back the curtain and revealed not just who he disapproved of, but why. And in doing so, he reignited a conversation about the soul of acting, the sanctity of storytelling, and the responsibility that comes with stepping in front of a camera. No aftermath had played out yet. No apologies, no rebuttals. But none of that mattered just then. What mattered was the silence that followed his words, the kind of silence that only comes when someone speaks with unflinching truth. That silence hung in the air like smoke from an old film projector, curling into the corners of the room, impossible to ignore. If you like this video, please give it a like and subscribe to our channel. Also, leave your comments below and tell us, what are your thoughts on Scorsese naming 7 actors he hates right now? We want to hear from you. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.